You ever wake up in the morning, and before your feet even touch the floor, your mind is already racing, thinking about bills, responsibilities, things that didn't work out yesterday. Or maybe that quiet fear in your chest that whispers, what if nothing changes? Yeah, that feeling. And the truth is, you're not alone in that. So many people across the US right now are moving through life, carrying invisible weight, working hard, trying to stay positive, doing all the right things, yet still feeling stuck, still feeling like abundance is just out of reach. But let me ask you something. What if it's not about working harder? What if it's not about chasing more, forcing more, proving more? What if the shift you've been searching for begins with something far more simple, yet far more powerful? Your words. Not just the words you say out loud, but the ones you whisper internally, every single day. Because whether you realize it or not, you are constantly speaking life into your reality, or draining it. Every thought you repeat becomes a belief. Every belief becomes an expectation. And every expectation quietly shapes what you allow yourself to receive. So if deep down, you've been saying things like, I'm behind, or money is hard to come by, or opportunities never work out for me, then your mind, your energy, your entire being, starts aligning with that frequency. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you've been conditioned that way. And here's the breakthrough moment. You can recondition it. You can literally retrain your mind, your emotions, your energy, to expect something better. You can become someone who doesn't chase opportunities, but attracts them. Someone who doesn't fear timing, but trusts it. Someone who doesn't question their worth, but embodies it. And it starts in the quietest, simplest way. By choosing new words that feel unfamiliar at first, maybe even uncomfortable, but words that carry truth, power, and alignment with the life you actually desire. Because abundance isn't something you beg for, it's something you align with. Opportunities aren't random. They respond to your internal state. And fear loses its grip the moment you stop feeding it with the same old story. So today, you're not just listening. You're stepping into a shift where you stop repeating limitations and start declaring expansion, a shift where you stop waiting for permission and start embodying certainty. Because your life doesn't change when circumstances change. It changes when you do. And in the next few minutes, you're going to experience exactly how powerful that shift can be. You know, most people don't even realize they're living inside a loop. A quiet, invisible pattern that's been running for years. It starts small, just a thought here, a doubt there. Maybe something you picked up growing up. Maybe something life taught you after a few disappointments. Like applying for a job you really wanted and getting rejected. Or putting your heart into something, your business, your idea, your content, and it just didn't land the way you expected. And after a while, you stop seeing those as moments. You start seeing them as proof. Proof that things don't work out. Proof that it's harder for you. Proof that maybe you should lower your expectations. And that's how the loop forms. Because the mind doesn't question repetition, it accepts it. So the more you think, this is just how it is for me, the more your entire system, your decisions, your energy, even your body starts operating from that place. You hesitate more, you play smaller. You second-guess opportunities before they even begin. And here's the part most people miss. It's not because you're incapable. It's because your mind is trying to protect you from feeling that disappointment again. But protection can quietly turn into limitation, and breaking that cycle. It doesn't start with forcing yourself to be fearless overnight. It starts with awareness, catching those subtle thoughts when they show up, those little whispers that say, don't try, it won't work, or you're already behind, or even, people like you don't get that kind of success. Pause there, because that voice, it's not truth, it's conditioning. And once you see it for what it is, something shifts. You stop automatically believing it. You create space between you and the story you've been repeating. I remember someone who was working 2 jobs, barely making ends meet, constantly stressed about rent, And every time an opportunity came up, something better, something bigger, they'd say, "I'm not ready for that yet." Not because they weren't capable, but because deep down, they didn't see themselves as someone who gets ahead. That belief alone kept them stuck longer than any external circumstance ever could. And the moment they started questioning that belief, just questioning it, things began to open. Not magically overnight, but steadily, powerfully. Because once the internal script starts changing, the external world has no choice but to respond differently. And that brings us to something even deeper. The words you use every single day are not neutral. They're not just expressions. They're instructions. Think about it when you say, "I'm always broke." Your mind doesn't argue, it goes, "Got it, that's the identity. Let's stay consistent with that." When you say, "Opportunities never work out for me," your awareness literally filters out anything that doesn't match that belief. It's like tuning into a radio station. You only hear what you're tuned into. So if your internal dialogue is stuck on scarcity, fear, doubt, that's the frequency you keep experiencing. But here's where it gets powerful. You can retune it, not by pretending everything is perfect, but by choosing words that lead you somewhere better. Words that stretch you, just a little, instead of, "Nothing is working." You begin to say, "Things are starting to shift for me." Instead of, "I can't afford that." You shift to, "I'm becoming someone who creates more than enough." And yeah, at first, it might feel uncomfortable. Your mind might resist, like, "This isn't true yet." That's okay. Because you're not lying to yourself. You're leading yourself. You're giving your mind a new direction, a new expectation, a new standard. Think of it like planting seeds. If you keep planting the same old thoughts, fear, doubt, limitation, you already know what grows. But the moment you start planting something different, even if you don't see results immediately, something is happening beneath the surface. Quietly, powerfully. And over time, those new thoughts don't feel forced anymore. They start feeling familiar, then believable, then natural. And eventually, they become your reality. So the real question isn't, "Why isn't my life changing?" The real question is, "What have I been repeatedly telling myself that's keeping it the same?" Because once you take ownership of that answer, you realize your words are shaping your direction. You stop speaking from your current situation, and you start speaking toward your desired future. And that's where everything begins to shift. You know, one of the hardest things for anyone to do, especially right now, is to trust what they can't see. Because everything around you is constantly telling you to measure progress by results, by numbers, by timelines, by how fast things are happening. And if it's not happening fast enough, it feels like something's wrong. Like you missed your moment. Like you're falling behind while everyone else is somehow moving ahead. But what if that pressure you feel isn't truth? What if it's just noise? Because real growth, real alignment, doesn't always look loud or immediate. Sometimes, it looks like stillness. Sometimes, it looks like nothing is happening. When in reality, everything is being rearranged behind the scenes. Think about it like this. You don't plant a seed and then dig it up every day to check if it's growing, right? You plant it, you water it, and you trust the process. But when it comes to your life, we get impatient. We start questioning everything. Why hasn't it happened yet? Am I doing something wrong? Maybe this just isn't meant for me. And that's where anxiety creeps in. Not because things aren't working, but because you're trying to control when they happen. And timing isn't something you force. It's something you align with. There are moments in life where things don't work out. Not because you failed, but because you were being redirected. Maybe you didn't get that job you thought you needed, only to find something later that aligned better with your growth, your peace, your purpose. Maybe a connection didn't last, and at the time, it hurt. It confused you. It made you question your worth. But later, you realized if that had worked out, you would have settled for less than what you truly deserved. That's the part people don't talk about enough. Delays are not denials. They're adjustments. their life creating space for something that actually matches who you're becoming. But you can only see that clearly when you stop rushing the timeline, when you stop saying, "It has to happen now," and start trusting, "It's happening at the right time for me." And yeah, that requires a different kind of strength. Not the kind that pushes harder, but the kind that stays grounded, even in uncertainty. Because the moment you release that tight grip on timing, something powerful happens. You shift from anxiety into trust, from forcing into allowing. And that shift, that's what opens the door to the next level. Because while you're waiting, you're not actually waiting, you're becoming. Becoming the version of yourself who can hold the abundance you're asking for. Because here's the truth: wealth, opportunities, success, they're not just external things you get. They respond to who you are internally, your energy, your beliefs, your sense of worth. If deep down you feel like you're not enough, or that money is stressful, or hard, or always slipping away, then even if opportunities show up, you might hesitate, sabotage, or not fully receive them. Not intentionally, but because it doesn't match your internal identity. That's why becoming an energetic match is everything. It's not about pretending you're already rich. It's about embodying the mindset of someone who is stable, abundant, and open. Someone who doesn't panic around money, but manages it with clarity. Someone who doesn't chase opportunities desperately, but recognizes them and moves with confidence. I remember someone who used to say, "I just need more money, that's all." But every time they got extra income, it disappeared just as fast. Unexpected expenses, poor decisions, constant stress. And when they really looked at it, they realized it wasn't just about money, it was about their relationship with it. They saw money as temporary, unstable, something that comes and goes. So that's exactly what they experienced. But when they started shifting internally, seeing money as something they could manage, grow, and keep, their external reality began to reflect that. Not instantly, but consistently. Because abundance isn't random, it's responsive. It flows where there is alignment, where there is belief, where there is emotional stability around receiving it. So while you're in this season, whether things feel slow, uncertain, or unclear, don't see it as being stuck. See it as preparation. A space where you're not just waiting for opportunities. You're becoming someone who naturally attracts them and keeps them. Because the goal isn't just to receive more, it's to become someone who can sustain more. And when you combine that inner alignment with trust in the timing, that's when things don't just happen. They flow in ways that feel right, stable, and meant for you. And suddenly, what once felt delayed feels perfectly on time.